we learned that environmental variability affects the species distribution. So, land has many more species than the ocean, and within the ocean the benthic zone has many more, almost all of the species in the ocean. So, over time then how is biodiversity changing? That should relate to how the environment has changed over time. So, if you go back to our Cambrian explosion period where many new species evolved, and start looking at the change in the number of families over time. Okay? We will see two examples of how environment changed. Why do we look at families and not species? Because if you just look for a species, it may have you may find the evidence or not, but if you find any member of the family, then you know that that family existed. So, it becomes easier to track the biodiversity in terms of families. So, at the bottom here what is shown is the approximate distribution of continents. So, we started with all the continents being together at the southern pole, and as we saw in another module, the continents split up and they started moving, and they are still moving northward. Eventually, they will merge at the northern pole in a couple of 100 million years. So, over time there are various pieces of continents that created changes in circulation, changes in shelf area and so on. Remember I mentioned that the shelf area basically determines how much nutrients and light and photosynthesis and the evolution of other species that depend on the food produced by the photosynthesis can evolve and so on. So, you can see that as the continents emerged into multiple species, there is a seeming jump in the number of families, and then as the continents remained approximately similar, there is a flattening of the distribution, and again geology created somehow the merging of the continents, and you can see that that created a drop in the number of families. Again, as the continents began to split, you see that there is an evolution of more number of families. So, overall there is an increase in biodiversity over these 500 million years, but the increase and decrease that happened along the way is depended on how the environmental variability was created by the continents splitting up, moving around, changing circulation, changing climate and so on. What is the other way you can change the environmental variability? Basically by having either flood basalts that can basically create millions of years of lava activity like it happened over the Deccan Plateau, or you can have meteorites hitting like the ones that hit and made the dinosaurs go extinct. So, there have been 5 mass extinctions that have been caused by various processes on the planet like the meteors or flood basalts, and there have also been many other major and minor extinction events. The main thing to notice here is that as you go in time, the number of genera, so you have to go, remember we are coming this way in time. So, we start at the Cambrian and we come towards the present. So, each time there is a minor or a major extinction event, new environmental habitats or niches open up, new temperature ranges, new humidity ranges, new climate, new sea level, new shelf area, etc. become available. So, the biodiversity increases. So, this process also has created almost a continuous increase in biodiversity. The context here is if human activity and global warming is creating new environmental niches and new species by creating environmental variability, or they are making the species go extinct. Biology is a complex process, so you can easily understand that both are going on. So, we are fragmenting the forest for example and creating new environmental niches, but we are also destroying habitats for some. So, some species will be going extinct, some species will be adapting, and some new species are evolving like the example of the finch that I mentioned on the Galapagos. So, the question is there are evolutionary time scales, and on shorter time scales how quickly can things evolve. If you catch a certain fish, for example sardines, if you keep catching them, are there new species evolving? There is some evidence that average lifespan of sardine is 11 years, but when the fishing pressure increases, the average lifespan goes to 7. So, that way they are either growing faster or the variety that only lives 7 years is becoming more abundant. So, this is the kind of complex interaction between environmental change either by natural processes or by human activities. We have to understand specific examples to see how biology responds in any given situation.